Hi, everyone. Welcome to day 11 of A43. Tonight, unfortunately, is our last night, but I'm excited to be here now with Uncharted Waters filmmakers for Q&A. Just before we begin, I want to give a shout out to our partners, ADOC and JCL. Thanks for sponsoring this short block. And before we go around, I just want to thank you all for being here. And let's start with Butao. And why don't you guys tell us a little bit about the film and introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Samantha Quick. I am the director of Luta. Luta is a virtual reality 3D animated film in partnership with a nonprofit in the Philippines called the Yellow Boat of Hope that builds boats for children who swim to school. And the film Luta is about a little girl named Jeremy who wants to be an inventor and is trying to find a better way to commute to school.
And my name is Michaela Trinaski Holland, and I produced the Tao alongside Samantha.
And why don't we go to Woody?
Hey, my name is Woody Fu. I co-created the comedy short Effing Japanese. I don't know if I can curse. Which is a short comedy, a live action comedy video in which a Korean woman and her Japanese lover are interrupted at an inconvenient time.
And Nguyen.
Hi, I'm Yen Q. I co-directed and co-produced Fly in Power along with Grace Na. And it's a short video about Yang Song, who was a massage parlor worker who tragically fell to her death during a police raid in Flushing in 2017, and the activism of Red Canary Song that has sprung from her life and her death, that highlights the issues that migrant massage parlor workers and sex workers have.
Great, thanks. Yahui.
Hi everyone, my name is Ye Hui. I'm a filmmaker based in New York City. My piece for the festival is a stop motion animation piece, and it's titled Xun. Xun means search in Mandarin. So for this piece, I'm exploring a sort of sense of diaspora and distance between between two homes, and the identity and the invisibilities of our identities. So for this piece, I juxtaposed paintings, animation, live action, and still images.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks. So I guess these are such different films. So we have VR for the first time, which is really exciting. And then we also have comedy, and we have documentary that is basically act like a social campaign too. So we have social campaigns, and I think all these films really tie together in a way that they challenge both form and traditional ideas. And so I wanted to first go around and see what the inspiration was for each of the films, what got you started on the project. Let's start with
Hi, yes. So I am a sex worker activist, and so the story of Sung Yang came to me through the activism work that I do in various fields. And I think that for me, in terms of heritage and being Chinese myself, but first generation, for me, it was also looking at a community that is within sort of a gray area of sex work. Many people within massage parlor working do not do sex work, and those people who do offer may not identify as sex workers, and yet decriminalization of sex work really looks to provide advocacy and protection for all of those people in those different sectors. And so for me, it was also looking at like an invisibilized community that even within my own Chinese communities, there's a lot of unease in speaking about the massage parlor work. And to me, it was like really grappling with like, okay, how to bridge that and I'm continuing to do so. So the video shows really some of the activism that has sprung from sex workers who are already in activism fields around around the most marginalized voices and trying to protect this community and give advocacy for this community. However, as we're ongoing, it's really about delving into a longer documentary. So we're still taking this video and continuously unfolding stories and bringing other voices to the camera in their own ways of agency.
Great, thank you. Woody, your film obviously deals with sex. You do a whole series that revolve the comedy series, Your Asian Friend. How did you come to this new idea? Because it seems like you tackle so many different aspects of the Asian diaspora.
Thank you. Well, both Your Asian Friend and the short that is part of AIFF this year was something that I made with my writing partner, SJ Sun, who's not here tonight. But a lot of it came from just us riffing and like talking and like, you know, from things from our personal lives and like wanting to write things that kind of speak to our experiences that we haven't seen made before. And so with this short, it came directly from like a conversation that we were having where she was hooking up with a Japanese guy. And then we were like, wouldn't it be funny if, and then we're like, oh wait, actually, it feels like it has legs. And then we kind of brainstormed it. And then there was there's this live stage show called Who Made the Potato Salad, which is basically like, they put up a sketch show in one day, basically. And so SJ and I were writers on that. And we were like, well, why don't we write this sketch for stage and see if it works? And it got a big reaction. And we're like, okay, let's produce this for film now. That's where this one specifically came from. But it's kind of like in terms of like making things, like Your Asian Friend is a series about not just about sex, but about like Asian identity in general. That just comes from conversations about like, oh, we've never seen something like, we've never seen this theme talked about in a comedic and like short, kind of hopefully entertaining way before. So it comes from just like not having seen it and wanting to make it for ourselves.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you start you're never seeing anything that you relate to, or there's one aspect of yourself that's not addressed, it's like that's what drives you to put those out there. And
Sure.
then
Yeah.
it turns out more people actually identify with it than you thought.
Right. That's like the plight of Asian American creators in America.
Yeah, exactly. So great. Thank you. Yahui, you made a film that is really unique with hand drawings and live action footage. Can you just talk about the process a little bit and how this shows your inner world?
Yeah, thank you. So for Xun, it's really like a personal meditation on my journey of I was born in China, grew up in China, and I moved to New York City around 5 years ago. And so before making this piece, I was just visiting home over the summer, and I took a lot of footages traveling with my mom and dad. So when I came back to the city, and I was kind of sort of like now we're used to Zoom and seeing everyone on video. So like I've been experiencing that for many years, seeing my families on the screen. So I thought about like using this idea of giving someone a screen head and animate this figure. And then so for the so that the footage in my film is actually the footage that I shot in China. So the idea of a hand, I was thinking of just like my personal journey of constantly wanted to leave home, following a sort of journey that's on my own, that's all about myself. And at the same time, it's bringing a sense of stuck in between, like the sense of betweenness being the interval that's not here or there. So this hand is guiding me, but what does this hand mean and where would it lead me to? And that was just kind of my meditation of that moment. Yeah.
Well, I love how it came out.
Thank you.
Michaela and Sam, you guys used animation to tell this story. What was your decision in making that? And I guess first, why this story? Like how does it connect to you personally?
So I signed up for the VR for Good program that Oculus does once a year. They have a creators lab that pairs young filmmakers with nonprofits. And it was there that I met Jay Jegathesan, who founded the Yellow Boat of Hope. And I went to the Philippines to learn more about the way that they live and what their community looks like, and possibly film there. My background is actually in 360 video and VR journalism. But because of the same problems that they have commuting, similar problems make it very difficult for any kind of film crew to film there. And doing a Pixar style animation seemed like a natural fit, especially for distribution. We didn't want to limit the people who could see it. So having a film that has no dialogue, that has animated characters, would make it easier for anyone who speaks any language to see it. And yeah, doing the animation was really fun. It allowed us to make something that maybe doesn't feel so serious. We wanted people to enjoy watching it, and have like a sense of hope, which actually when it was released, it was right during the pandemic. So I think people were feeling like really grim already. It's pretty sunshiny, even though it deals with a very, very serious issue. And when I went to visit, I noticed that everyone was extremely focused on community and teamwork. So it was really, really important that be honored, with the writing and the plot and the story. And Michaela, I grew up in a family with a lot of siblings, and she helped write and develop the piece. She's actually my co-creator. And I'll let her talk a little bit more about what inspired her in the writing process.
Great, thanks. Really interesting.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I was super excited as a Filipino American when Sam asked me to join her and help co-create and write the piece. For me, I really wanted these children to not be painted in like a poverty porn light, because I think that we see enough of that on a day-to-day basis, especially as documentarians and journalists. And I really wanted to make sure that these children, even if they were facing really serious problems, that they were painted in a space that felt really accessible and really identifiable to any kind of children and to any parent and to any adult. So we really modeled the two main characters, Jeremy and Isco, after a brother and a sister. Just in normal day-to-day terms, you always have like, you know, the sister who is really focused on what she needs to do, and the little brother who just wants to play and hang out. And you kind of see that unfold amongst Jeremy and Isco. And what I really love about their relationship is that it really encapsulates that sense of hope and that sense of youthfulness and that sense of innovation that Samantha told me that she really saw on the island, and that I know kind of lives in all of us. And having a background in Disney myself, I really wanted it to feel like strong characters that had sort of skin in the game, no matter how old you are. And it was really incredible to really see those characters come to life because of our incredible concept artist and art director, Tad Butler and Ruby Wang. And then as a Filipino American, it was really important for me that we also gave back to the Philippines. So I had a goal to make sure 3/4 of our budget went back to the Philippines. And we were able to do that by hiring an animation studio called Shebot VR. And we were able to do that by having a Filipino score composer come on and do our credit scene piece. And that's something I'm really excited and proud of, because I think moving into this new era of activism, journalism, and documentary filmmaking that showcases and is created by people who look like those people, it's really important that we also think about where our budgets are going and who we're hiring on the backside, as well as who we're showcasing on the front side. So that's a little bit of that insight into the Tao, both on the story end and a little bit in the production end.
Oh, that's amazing that you guys have been able to do so much with the film. Congratulations. Thanks. I guess going off of that, I was wondering how you think that the form that you've chosen, or how do you decide first on the form that you want your project to take to make this, to carry out this story? And how do you think that helps you achieve your goal in the end. So in the sense of activism, right? Why choose this documentary over doing it in a VR project? You know, why use animation? And Woody, for you, how do you use comedy? Like, how do you use comedy and why do you use that versus any other approach? And we'll start with you, Woody.
Sure. Yeah. My background is comedy, and so a lot of when I first began writing, it was all kind of lensed through sketch, anyways, or like characters, or like it was always intended to be seen in a scenic and funny way, because of like UCB training and just my background. So like with this, in general, like I don't know. I think it's. At the end of the day, everyone's like, okay, we get it, race, there's injustice, boohoo. And part of it is like, if you can entertain someone while also like telling them something that is not like smashing them on the head, being like, you're wrong, feel bad about your choices, then you're ultimately going to have a much better chance of actually changing someone's mind. It's like, so for example, for us, when we were making our shorts, like, I was always going off of Key and Peele as like a gold standard for the ability to do that, to have social criticism, but also be really entertaining and like, leave you feeling like a couple feelings, not just like, haha, the end, but like, haha, the end. Also, that was actually true. And like, I never thought of it that way, and also kind of tragic. And also now I'm thinking about it. Because otherwise, like, no one wants to be preached to, the second anyone feels like they're being preached to, they're like shut down or like become defensive or whatever. And if you can disarm them with like a joke or a laugh or something, then, there's like this quote that like, the less likely you are to laugh about something, the more cathartic it is to actually laugh about that thing, so to like provide that kind of opportunity is like, to me, is like kind of the goal of the stuff that SJ and I make, is to provide the cathartic laugh, like the recognition laugh, the like, oh, I thought that, I've known that, this rings true, this resonates, it feels authentic, even if it's like an absurd scenario. Then that laugh becomes kind of reparative, and that's kind of our goal with what we make.
Great, thanks. And how can I ask? Curious, how did you guys start working together? Like, and a little bit about the collaboration.
Sure. So we both met doing Story Pirates, which is a nonprofit children's theater company. And basically in New York and in LA, they like go to public schools and then take stories written by kids and then like put them on they stage them as like short musical sketches for the kids. And the whole thing is to like encourage literacy and like creative writing in kids. It's a really cool group. So we met doing a show, a Story Parts show at the Museum of Natural History, where we were rapping about climate change. And from there, like I was working on my first one-man show, which was called Asian Gracefully. If you guys like puns, you get it. And she was in a sketch for that. And from there, we're like, oh, like we work well. We have a good creative relationship. And then I don't know how interesting any of this is, but then I knew somebody at UCB who was producing a series, and they were like, do you have any pitches for like web series? Because we have like a producer who can actually make some of this stuff. And I'm like, yeah. And I wanted to work with SJ because we had a good experience working on my show. So I reached out to her, and then we pitched Your Asian Friend, which is a sketch series. And then after that was produced, we kind of continued working together.
Cool, thanks. Nguyen, because I know you also have you've made Miss Mercy, which we showed last year, and so that's very different than Young Sing's form. So you work in a lot of different approaches.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm a writer. I'm not I don't come from filmmaking expertise, and I really rely on the people around me for the filmmaking artistry of it. So although Grace is not able to speak tonight, we did speak right beforehand. We're in constant collaborative conversation. I think that going forward, and like also what we had tried to do with the video was really to highlight the other people's stories and words and bring them together as the collage of like what is meaningful with the story of Song Yang, especially meeting with her brother and getting the personal story, and then really interviewing then the people who had taken up the torch to do the activism afterwards through Red Canary Song. And continuing, we're doing the same thing of like really wanting to bring it together with like this poetic stitching of a quilt of who are we in this collective community, that it is not just a, you know, Red Canary Song aims to not just be like a provisions organization where there's a hierarchy of like people providing provisions and people who are receiving. It's and I can speak now too, because I organize now with Red Canary Song on a much more active basis, and that I was actually at and did a lot of the provisions meetings throughout the COVID time. That like when I brought food to the workers that I was involved with in Flushing, they were then also coming back to me and bringing homemade dumplings or homemade zongzis, and it was just like it's a very much of a circle of care. So that's something that we really want to express through our filmmaking also, is how that there's not like one side that is the production and then the other side that is the documented object as we see from like, you know, traditional documentaries.
Right, great, thank you. Yahui.
Yeah, so when I was so I created this piece during one of my classes at the program that I'm in, which is IMA at Hunter, Integrated Media Arts. So when I was proposing this project for my class, I had this surrealist journey idea in my mind. So I knew that I would have to use something, I would have to draw it out in order for it to exactly fit how I envision it. And also another thing is that I was looking back to my past 5 years of living in the city and thinking of how I have grown and the things I've learned about my identity and the environment around me. Because I'm also a painter, so I had a few paintings collected from past 5 years. So I wanted to use them as well. So I combined my paintings with my animation in the creation process. And another thing I think about, like, which is also a theme that I wanted to touch on in this piece, is invisibility, like the feeling of not being seen, or the experience of diaspora, just not being talked a lot about, that kind of feeling. So this invisibility of identity in the society. So thinking of that, I started thinking about, if I draw every frame of my character, then I'm really sort of like enlarging their every movement of this character. And for me, that's reassuring. That's, for me, I'm spending so much time and space for this character that I'm creating. I wanted to devote that of myself to it. And I'm doing that. It's time consuming, but it really brings me to a different time and space. And that's what I really enjoy, which is the creation process, and then continue exploring the possibilities of the creation process. So that's why I thought animation was the right choice for this piece for me.
Yeah, and thanks. And something it's so different, the process, right? When you're touching something and using a pen and seeing that texture and those imperfections versus just going straight to the computer and working in the digital, or straight to the camera. Yeah, great, thanks. Sam or Michaela, could you talk a little bit about your background with VR? I know, Sam, you said that you've worked mainly in 360 journalism, and I just wonder what drew you to that form in the first place.
So I actually went to school for computer animation. And I became really, really interested in virtual reality and the possibilities it afforded playing video games. And the Oculus Developers Kit, I was really fascinated by the ways in which you felt things physically on like a visceral level. And I was really fascinated by people's ability to really, really lock into whatever narrative was given to them. And for virtual reality journalism, it was really useful when actually visiting physical spaces, places that people don't normally have access to or that would be off limits. And even though Lutah is an animated, drawn world, we worked very, very closely with the art director to pull references from the island itself. So the same plants and sounds that were in the Philippines on this island, in this community, are also present in the film. We drew a lot of patterns and textiles that were unique and local to that area. And so a lot of the same elements, even like the birds that come in, they're this like specific regional bird. And we also worked with the composer to bring a lot of the sounds of the Philippines. We looked at a lot of Filipino folk music. So we really wanted to make sure that we were drawing a lot of inspiration from like multiple places, so that it really did have the same feeling as the place that we're trying to represent and emulate. And I think that we created like an absolutely gorgeous virtual world. I think that it's really engaging. And even though it's not like a photorealistic representation, I think that it affords something that traditional film mediums can't.
I completely agree. I think when I'm wearing a headset, it's this level of immersion, right, that draws this feeling of empathy, right? I can be in that place. I feel like I'm more immersed in that story by understanding what their environment might feel like. And so I think that's why VR for me is a really powerful tool. And I think you guys did such a wonderful job. The animation is gorgeous. And I mean, I had mentioned this before, but that opening scene with the bubbles coming up surrounding you is probably one of my favorite shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really wanted to have like a gorgeous underwater moment, just because the people who live there do rely so much on the water and do have like such a close relationship to sea life and everything in it. And if you do like even like put a snorkel on and stick your head in, I mean, it's really, really gorgeous. The coral reefs, the fish, it's just really, really stunning. And so I wanted to make sure that the viewers got a little taste of that.
Great. Michaela, would you like to add anything?
I would love to add something. I just have a very loud music outside my window. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, hopefully it drives away soon. I grew up as a performer, and I have a dance background. And so just let me know if I need to like pause for a second. I have a dance background, and like a lot of Southern California, Asian Americans, I had a family that said, don't pursue dance. And I still pursue dance, and I was able to have the opportunity to perform for Disney Cruise Line, for Disneyland, for Legoland, for SeaWorld, and even got to be a part of Cabo Modern at UC Irvine. When I realized that my school of journalism that I was studying lacked a lot of the same immersion and interactivity of these themed parks, I recognized that there was a huge need in storytelling for this more immersion and interactive quality. That being said, that doesn't mean that the older mediums are being left behind. For me, it's actually bringing the older mediums and the newer mediums together, because empathy can be created no matter what. It's just the quality of work. As long as the quality is there, as long as the story is strong, and as long as the care and precision is being made to it, a photo on the wall is just as empathetically can draw enough empathy as much as a VR piece. So that's sort of where I went into the immersive interactive world. I played with VR within installations. I played with VR within volumetric room scale playground styles. I'm so sorry. The Lower East Side. So that was a little bit of my background. I was super excited again to bring my background with Disney and my background of sort of like storytelling for a younger audience and bringing that imagination and that lifelike sort of brilliance of imagination and innovation to the form of VR, and then of course with the background of the Filipino sort of entity and community. So just to me, we were sort of told we had to do VR because of Oculus VR for Good, but it felt like a really natural step for me in my process. What we are currently sort of struggling with, though, for me, what's really important is making sure that the community that we created the piece about is able to also enjoy the piece. And because the island does not have electricity and not access to VR headsets, we're really working with the Yellow Boat of Hope Foundation to make sure that we can find a way to bring the piece to the children and bring the piece to the Yellow Boat of Hope volunteers, because the piece is truly just an homage to them, and it's truly a celebration of them. It's not meant to really be this like, let's, this self-celebratory piece. And so for us right now, I think as VR storytellers, we're really trying to figure out how we make sure the accessibility to the headsets becomes available to that community. So it's a little bit of the downside, I think, of the medium that we're sort of working with right now.
Seems to be quickly expanding, so hopefully that won't be too much of an issue in like following years. Great. So I was actually wondering, is there something that you guys, what's something surprising that you learned maybe through this process, or a challenge that you came across that was unexpected? And I'll kind of come back to the beginning here, which is Woody, I believe. Woody?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple, I mean, aside from your garden variety, like production nightmares, like, oh, we don't have like this thing that we were going to rent is not available. And then like, now we have to get it. And like, we have to bank all this in 12 hours, et cetera. A thing that came up was, so in this short, my dad is in it, and also SJ's mom is in it. And they have a comedic beat with each other. And so my SJ and I were like furiously running lines over and over with them before we were filming, being like, you have to say exactly, like, imagine all of the anxiety and frustration you have talking to your parents, but also like you're directing them on camera, and also they need to hit a comedic thing with somebody else that they've never met before. So it was kind of like that. And so I was literally like, you have to do this, stop, do this, like as if, like perfectly, like you have to do it exactly this way. And then SJ, like right next to me, was doing exactly the same thing for her mom. It was also like, there was a hair and makeup person on set that that made me look like I was a grandpa, basically. So I have like old making makeup on me. And I definitely like looked in a mirror. I was like, okay, well, I'm literally, this is truly my living, walking nightmare, because I've become my own father now. And that was probably like the unexpected thing from set, where I was like, oh, number one, I'm dressed up like my dad, LOL. And then number two, like I'm directing my dad with SJ directing her mom to like get this bit for the video.
Had you ever worked with them before, or was it the first time?
We had, yes. I had used my dad for a bit in Your Asian Friend, and SJ had used her mom in a short film that was actually in AIFF 2 years ago, called Sujung Dreams of Fiji. But yeah, we've worked with them before.
I saw that one. It's really funny. I saw it's on Amazon too, right?
I'm sorry?
Her film is on Amazon also.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, cool. That's hilarious. Well, I'm glad it went relatively smoothly and it wasn't too eerie to like see yourself exactly like your dad or just like him.
Yeah, no, I've made peace with the fact that I am literally going to become my dad, and that's just what's going to happen.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Let's go to Yin. Or that you didn't, a challenge that you didn't see coming.
Well, COVID is going on now, so like I guess like because we're continuing to develop the documentary, that's where the challenge that we are facing now, and like how to film and get to places where we need to film and get to people we need to film. I think I going to speak about a challenge that was not surprising necessarily, but it's definitely something that we're still grappling with, is like how to bring people, lifestyles, and identities into documentary with their own agency when they are criminalized, and how to protect their privacy, how to not to be sure that we are not glorifying any of the really hard survival work that they have to deal with, the violence that surrounds them, so that it doesn't become like sort of like another Law and Order SUV, you know, really just glorified thing that happens with the words that are sort of like anti, you know, used by antis rhetoric out there, where it's like trafficking and you know, slave rings and things like that. And how do we like actually create, be able to bring the humans to front and center, and yet not endanger them, not only from harassment, violence, police arrests, but then also even from their own community, as well as from establishments that they would be working at, to, you know, make sure that they're not necessarily going to be blacklisted. So that's a big concern of ours.
Right. And I mean, the movement has really taken off ever since her death. And I think during COVID, right, you were saying earlier that even then it's actually seems to be exponentially growing. And I think that's really amazing. I'm working these things out still, that there's been movement and there's been progress. So it's great.
Yeah, we've worked with, there are people within Red Canary Song, Esther, who does amazing coalition, and Esther and Eves, who does amazing coalition work with C2C, which is a Chinatown to Chinatown, you know, coalitions that basically are nationwide, and they have really worked with other Chinatown labor organizations, as well as like anti-gentrification organizations, to sort of bring these issues front and center in our communities. So it's really, yeah, it's been amazing to watch and be part of.
Yeah. Yahweh, anything that was surprising that you discovered maybe about yourself or during the process of making this?
Yeah, one thing that was interesting was I didn't think I would have to act for an animation piece as well, because I realized I cannot draw frame by frame without a reference of myself. So I would have to record. I recorded myself with the hand. I recorded my hand walking on the table, so I can draw frame by frame. So that was interesting. And another aspect is that I proposed this in my mind. This project was going to be more like a linear story of a girl like going through different layers of exploration, different layers of world, and locating a piece of herself. And it ended up being more experimental. And I think it was a lot to do with me being comfortable with being more experimental, and give the viewers just enough information to kind of understand the feeling of it. So by the end, I was able to feeling okay, like it's not a linear story like what I originally imagined, but it does sort of convey a sense of disorientation. That was what I was trying to communicate. And I also have interesting parent comments as well. Is that for the piece that I shot in China, my mom was telling me, because I was telling her I'm using that piece, she was like, the video is not of good quality enough to be used in the film. So my mom has this idea about the quality of a film and how it has to be, and then it can't be pixelated. It has to be a certain solution. So that was interesting, but I ended up using it, and I think it worked for me.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. I just want to see what everyone is working on now. If there's a new project in the works, maybe a new idea. I'll start with Michaela.
Yeah, so my friend Adele Pham has created a documentary about nail salons across the United States, and it has a very poignant Vietnamese American focus. And she and I are collaborating right now with Juvie Productions, which is a Viola Davis's production company, to create some sort of immersive interactive experience around the nail salon community, and especially in light of the COVID pandemic. There's a lot of discussion about the negative effects about the COVID pandemic on racial aggression. Obviously, Governor Newsom of California blamed nail salons for the COVID-19 spread. But what a lot of people actually don't know is it's also a really positive. There's a couple positive items that have happened because of COVID. First of all, mask wearing for nail techs have become less of a stigma, because now we nationwide are wearing masks. And the fact that we are now enforcing, and the government, when possible, is actually funding better HVAC systems and better air purification quality systems. That's actually like a huge yes for nail salons and nail techs as well, who suffer a lot of health problems due to lack of quality filtration systems in their buildings. So that's really amazing. And then I'm working with an Asian American theater company to bring their narrative vaudeville based in history experience to the virtual screens. So I'm really excited about those two. And then I would love to tell another Filipino American story in the next few months. So if there's anyone out there who wants to collab, let me know.
Sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sam, what are you working on next?
I'm actually working more in the interactive space and the game space. So I've got two projects going on. One, I've always wanted to do a piece based on this white paper about frog perception. And there's a really beautiful animation from the 70s that it basically frogs, they only see things that are moving. So you hear the wind and the grass moves, and you just see the grass as it's moving. You hear a fly and you just see the fly moving. And I want to put that in VR with a mechanic, but also like put it in some sort of like educational program, so that it's a series of different animals and the way that they perceive the universe. So I thought that would be interesting. I thought it would be interesting to see through the point of view of different animals and the different ways they're wired. And then the other thing is an interactive music visualizer, which runs on WebGL and slowly starts to come alive and talk to you.
Wow, that sounds really interesting.
We
could probably have a whole conversation about that. So you said that the first one, being put into the perspective of the point of view of these different animals, is a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
How is that a game? Like, so is it just being able to choose your perspective, like the animal, or is there more to that interactive component of the game?
So we're still working on the demo right now. So we're just doing the frog, but other ideas that we've explored, I think they would be modular. So I think it would be something sort of inspired by Frogger. We want to give like a nod to like a classic game. So the objective is very like catch flies, like hop around. Something pretty simple, but that also like recalls like older like NES, like Nintendo games. And other ideas that we've explored are a spider web. So like actually like drawing out like a spider web with controllers, and then using the haptic the haptic sensors in the controllers to feel like when prey has been caught and proceed accordingly, whether that means like wrapping it up and sucking the life out of this bug that you trapped in your web, or dolphins have echolocation, so they can go through like a series of environments. Maybe they go through like a sandy or murky area, and they actually have to send out pings with the controller to see in front of them like fish or whatever. So I think there's a lot of room for like play and experimentation. And if you can learn something passively while doing it, I think that that's super fun too. I'm really, really fascinated by passive learning of information while having fun.
Wow, this sounds so exciting. I can't wait to see. We actually, just this year also, part of digital, we started game nights. So we're starting to feature some games too. So whenever it's ready, you should let us know.
Yeah, I would love to.
Let's see. Woody, what are you working on now?
SJ and I are putting out a podcast. It's called Emotional Slut. The logline is basically, I want to say it right. If Americans are sexually repressed and Asians are emotionally repressed, then Asian Americans are double repressed. And the premise of the show is basically like, and also obviously this doesn't apply to everyone. And if it doesn't, then congratulations, you're emotionally well adjusted. But the idea of the podcast is that like me and her both have a lot of like, because we're normally repressed, we don't have like a healthy way of expressing like emotions, or like, so we have like a lot of like emotional or sexual outbursts or disaster stories. Like we'll just start screaming at an avocado for some reason. And so the podcast is about those stories, like times when you're just like, your repression comes out in a weirdly humiliating public way. And on it, we take anonymous dating disaster stories from listeners, and we read them out loud and we kind of break them down. And we're like, has this ever happened to you? What do you think is happening here? What do you think is happening underneath that? You know, we kind of just like, it's kind of like therapy. And we're putting it out like once every week, once every other week ish. But that's what we're working on right now.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait to, I guess, listen. Yeah.
It's on Spotify and Apple.
Nice. Okay, great. I'm assuming that Young Sing's project and the movement is very long term. Do you have any time for anything else? I know we talked about Miss Mercy and season 2.
Mercy Mistress is on hold for at the moment. Grace Null and I are still continuing to develop this documentary, but also really looking into the history of sort of this targeted racism against the Asian female body, especially with the Page Act, really targeting women, Chinese women, and the reasons for banning the immigration was saying, you know, stating that all Chinese women coming to the States at that time were prostitutes. And then how does that translate now in current times of what we see as the trafficking missions? Of course, we don't want people to be abused or trafficked or exploited, but at the same time, there's like this kind of overreaching mission that uses a lot of language that flips sort of an old time guilt of slavery language on its head in terms of what trafficking has now become. So we're taking a look at that, and also how does that like also coincide with the anti-terrorist movement of surveillance. So there's a lot going on right now. I'm also with a group that is also going into residency with iBeam in terms of developing some programs online within the tech field. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, well, I mean, large movements and a lot of collaborations. Great. Well, let's see. And Yahweh, what else are you working on right now?
Yeah, so I personally have been very interested in like non-recorded history and memories. And also been looking for like some like historical figures that like have not been talked about and then with no archival footage, no documentation about a lot of the like anti-colonial movements during the 1800 and early 1900 in China. So I was researching and discovered this kind of female revolutionary leader, and which would in this revolution called Boxer Rebellion, and it was a peasant-led organization against like the European colonial force at the time in China, and then which I thought was really amazing because during like such a sexist time of history that women considered inferior, and she became this just very like reputable leader that with like so many other female followers, and then she was even like considered like a goddess like figure, and thought to have superpower based on like some of the literacy at the time. So literature at the time. So and then she was eventually captured by the European troops and was said to have her body displayed as museums in European countries. But nobody knows what really happened. I read some writings from journalists at the time about just them visiting this woman after she was captured, and then just writing about like kind of just like writing about her being a cell, but she was wearing this like gold embroidered beautiful gown underneath, because you could tell that she was a really higher up person, but she was in a very deserted place and she was looking sad. So like talking about like the last moments of her life, and I was really touched by it. So I kind of sort of imagined her becoming a spirit and just like drifting in the world aimlessly to New York City and found me and then develop a connection with me. So in this way, I really wanted to just talk about her memories and her history, and also like the anti-colonial efforts that were done by women, like which is something I really wanted to tell stories about, because I think that part of history is not being told, and I think that there were a lot of great movements and rebellion forces throughout the history that deserve to be heard. So I just sort of using like a personal approach to tell like her big story. But obviously she was born, I think, late 1800. There wasn't a lot of like documentation about her life. So for her in my film, she's more like a symbol of a sort of like that figure from the history, and I was trying to help her recover her lost memory because she refused to remember. So that's my premises.
I love this idea. I mean, yes, and the issues that you're addressing about the anti-colonial efforts by women in the past. But I like this idea that you're in dialogue with a woman, a leader across all those years, and how it kind of transcends time. So I'm excited. It sounds like it'll be a beautiful piece. I was actually wondering if you guys wanted to give like a pitch as to why people should see your film if they haven't already done so. We have a few minutes left. So a little pitch and maybe just any last words that you want to leave everyone with. Start with Michaela and Sam.
Why you should watch Luta? Well, I think that it is pretty and a mood lifter with an important social message. I personally learned a lot about the ways that people live. And when I first heard about the Yellow Boat of Hope, it took me a minute to process what that even means, kids swimming to school. And if you haven't done VR, I think it's a pretty good entry point. It's not too nauseating, which a lot of VR films can be. And yeah, it's just really tender and sweet. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I love the experience, and I got to try it in the headset, so that's even cooler. And yeah, I can't wait to see what you guys work on next.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, Woody, a little pitch and any last words.
Yeah. Well, our short is blue, and so you should definitely wear headphones if you're going to watch it because it's not safe for work. LOL, no one works anymore. But for me, it is like there is like a salacious, sexy component to it. But what I love about it is, I mean, I feel like if you have an immigrant parent, then you're deeply familiar with like intragroup racism, which I think is the funniest kind of racism imaginable. It's like when the Dutch are racist against the Danish for being taller and whiter than they already are. You know what I mean? It's like to that point, it's like very funny. And so this short is fundamentally about Asian intergroup racism. And of course, obviously all that racism is justified usually because of culture defining like wartime atrocities. But like for me, it's something that is like, if you're Asian American, you grow up, and you have Asian immigrant parents, it's just an accepted thing that like, it's just there. And like from the time you're very little, it's just like constantly there. And so this sketch was kind of a way to negotiate that. And we think everyone should watch it.
I think so too. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Nguyen, could you just talk about a little bit about the film, why people should see it, and just last words to push the movement?
Sure. I mean, I feel like the video itself is a push to see a longer documentary. It seems like a trailer in itself. But I'm going to just echo the words of McCoy, who had spoken on the film, in that, why do we want to care about sex workers' rights? Why do we want to care about the rights of a vast amount of people who are doing survival work? And I think it's because, to be honest, each and every one of us knows a sex worker, whether you think you do or not. The most conservative person out there knows, and it probably loves, somebody who has done some kind of sex work in their past. And the fact that many of us don't know who that sex worker is what causes the shame, and that causes so much depression and suicides and deaths and violence that happens to women, trans, and queer folk all across the globe. But why do we want to care about sex workers' rights also is because whether you know it or not, the sex workers have influenced how you embody your own sexuality. It's very likely that what you've seen on media has been directly taken or educated by or stolen by sex workers who have come out and created things, or have been out and have been educating the masses for centuries and for histories. So I think that it's also this idea that like it is in your home, whether you know it or not, and to then like understand like how it comes into your home, and then how you. And I'm a parent also. I'm a sex worker activist, and I'm a parent of two daughters. So it's like this constant like thinking to me of like, how do I want those things to come into my home through screens? How do I embody like an empathy and that where my own lifestyle has come to a point of activism, and how can I understand from many points of view, like what sex worker rights means to the women's movement, to the queer movement, to the trans movement, and to Black Lives Matters movement, as well as to the Asian rights movements across the board. So that's my pitch.
Thank you. It's great. Yahweh, why should people come see your film?
I think that I think for my film, Xun, is the themes of it is pretty open-ended. It's really, because Xun means to search, and I was really elaborating on a searching journey, and I think everyone has something to search for, where they have searched for in their life or in this exact moment. So I think that there will be pieces or sections where it can connect to your personal life, and that's what I enjoy with experimental films, is that there can be different layers of open-ended connections to people. But but specifically for folks who live in experience of diaspora, I think that this is a conversation that needs to happen more often. And I think that I think that whether you have moved like with your own wish to another place, or whether you have moved your parents or your families were forced to relocate to another place or another foreign land, this feeling of distance, this feeling of not being able to be settled, this feeling of between places, and that's something I hope people can connect with. Yeah, and I think that's, yeah, and another thing is that I think that I think in general, I think like people should be watching films that are made by people of color in general, because filmmakers of color and filmmakers who are women of color, there just hasn't been a lot of kind of like enough media, enough platform to hear our voices and to just to be part of our experience. So I think that the festival is inviting people to be in our experience, and I think everyone I think everyone should be invited and I should join in this experience with us. Yeah.
Definitely. Yes, everyone should. Everyone should check out all these films and VR experiences. That's it for tonight. So I just want to thank you guys all for being here tonight and talking about your films. It's been really great. And I can't wait to see what you guys make next. And I wish you all the best. So good night. Bye, everyone.